We're sisters, best friends, and authors on a mission to help you stoke your creative fire and live the life of your dreams. We believe that purpose fuels passion and that creativity is your secret weapon for mass construction. There's never been a better time to bless the world with your dream realized. You're listening to The Kate and Abbie Show.
Hello, guys. What is up? Welcome to another episode of The Kate and Abbie Show. This is episode 14. Wow. Dang.
14.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Welcome. Grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea. Unless you're driving, commuting somewhere, listening to this, then just concentrate on driving.
Yes, for sure. Today is a fun topic that is highly requested and highly talked about. Not like not like super highly talked about, but
in the writer's world, it's like always like this question's always cropping up one way or another.
Yeah, which is how to write distinctive character voices so that your characters don't all sound the same. So whether you're writing a story with multiple point of views, bouncing back and forth between different people's, different characters' heads, different characters' perspectives, or you're writing from even third person and you're writing dialogue and you want the dialogue to sound distinctive so that every character doesn't sound like the same character speaking, this is going to be a great episode for you to listen to if you are struggling with this or just want to learn more about it. So me and Katie both have quite a bit of experience writing multiple points of view. We usually write multiple points of view in our writing in our books. So it's going to be interesting going back and forth and discussing just the different ways to make your character voice unique and stand out. So yeah, let's get into it. Do you want to go first? I've written down a few things to go over.
Go right ahead.
Helped
you,
me. Okay.
You kick it off.
So one of the first things the first thing I do really when I start to develop characters is figure out, first of all, their role in the story. Like after I figured out their internal conflict and everything, of course, their role in the story, and then their personality type. So whether I'm using a indicator like Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, figuring out their personality type is a great first step, I think. If you're clueless as to what their personality is going to be like and what they're going to speak and think like, how they're going to process thought, what their voice is going to be. Because personality, I think, has a ton to do with voice, whether it's you're a character or a real person. Like it applies for real life, it applies for writing. Your personality has a lot to do with your voice and how you think and how you speak. So figuring out ahead of time either their MBTI type or their Enneagram type can really help you to get like a little head start, I think, on figuring out what their voice is going to sound like, and also their role in the story. Like if they're the comic relief, they're going to have a very different style voice than if they're like the broody hero or anti-hero, or if they're like a person who has a lot of secrets and is very reserved, they're going to have a different voice than a person who's like very bubbly and happy and extroverted. So figuring that out from the very beginning, I think, will be a good jumping off point to really honing their voice and making it unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first one I have written down kind of jumps, like springboards right off of what you just said, which is the words, the jargon, and the way they speak. So like figuring out like a lot of people based off, personality or culture or location or whatever, they'll, talk a certain way. They'll use certain words. They'll say certain things. And figuring out like, okay, don't have every character sound like that. So if you have, a character named John who says like a lot, or he laughs nervously a lot, or he uses turns of phrase a lot, like, whatever, like using phrases like, killing two birds with one stone, or he always is like comparing something to some sort of analogy, then don't have other characters do that. Or if you have a character who swears a lot, not every single character is going to swear a lot. So, and if they do, then that's when they all start to sound alike. So basically, like you were just saying, figure out the personality of your character. Like someone who's really extroverted is probably going to be saying maybe how they feel a lot of the time. Maybe they're voicing their opinions a lot. But then if you have a character who's more reserved and quiet, they're probably not going to be doing that. And that's when it starts to feel like, well, that's kind of unrealistic, especially if someone who's like, oh, I can relate to having more of a reserved personality, but then they see the character doing things that are like, you know, they sound like all the other characters, and they'll be like, well, wait, they're not really that shy because they sound exactly like this really extroverted character. So just figuring out the little nuances of personality and executing their voices accordingly. And I just think like the words and the jargon is like a big component of that.
Yeah, it is for sure. And that actually leads into another note that I wrote down, which was a thing that I do for every book I write, and it helps me so much, is to write up like this is just for you, a personal character voice style sheet, basically, for each character who is going to be having a lot of participation in either the dialogue or you're going over to their point of view.
Did you talk about that in a recent video?
Yeah, I did.
What video was that?
In a few videos. I talk about it in, I talked about it recently in my editing video.
Okay,
I talked about line editing.
That was the one I was thinking of.
And fixing character voice, because that's one thing you want to look for when you're line editing. And even side note, insert, if you have a character who is a particular personality that you're not like familiar with, like it's maybe totally opposite of your personality, and you're like, I hope this sounds realistic to that personality, find somebody, a friend of yours who's similar, and have them read it and be like, does that sound like realistic? Like, you being similar to this character, does it feel realistic to you? And that can be a good indicator and a good way to kind of test it out. But with the character style sheet, it's super helpful because you can write down those phrases like you mentioned, and like the analogies, and like, you know, this character is going to use a lot of analogies, and even formatting, which is one of my favorite things, like having unique formatting in the book, and using like a lot of parentheses or a lot of like really weird specific metaphors with like hyphens between them, and like things like that make it more unique to that character, but don't let other characters do that. And so by writing down like all the little idiosyncrasies that each character has in their voice, you can really keep track of them better and make all your characters very distinctive from each other. And it's just an important thing to watch for, I think, when you're also in the editing process of like, oh, wait, that sounds like that other character.
Right, exactly.
Making note of that.
Right, and it's worthy of noting, like we've said on other occasions, like don't get into like a paralysis over this of like, oh, I'm afraid they're all going to sound the same. Like, and you're like so overly like analytical of it and aware of it now. Like, you know how like when you become aware of like your eyelids blinking and then like you can't unsee that and unnotice it every time. Has that ever happened to you?
I don't know.
It's so annoying.
It
like,
will now. Thank you very much.
If I start like noticing every time I blink, it's like, oh look, I just blinked. Oh, it just happened again. It just happened again. And it's like so aggravating. And so it's kind of like that. Like if you're like, oh, that character, see, they just sounded like that. Oh, see, oh, I can't do this right. Oh, I'm not doing this right. Oh, it's going to sound bad. Like just leave it for the editing stage and don't worry about it too much. Like don't get into a state of like paralyzing fear.
Yeah,
not
for
feel.
sure.
A paralyzing fear over like, oh, it's, you know, I'm scared it's going to turn out bad.
Yeah.
Like just, you can edit it later.
Yeah, definitely. And you can also ask other people. You can ask your beta readers. You can ask your, critique partner. It's like, does this sound okay? Something about it sounds weird. And a lot of times they'll have like the perfect solution. So don't sweat it too much.
Yeah, and a lot of times you're going to be the hardest on your writing. Just saying. I've had scenes where I'm like, oh, this is terrible. And then someone beta reads it for me and they're like, that was my favorite part. And I'm like, okay, cool. Yay, it was terrible.
Yeah.
So like just, don't take it so seriously.
Yeah.
Loosen up.
Another thing that has really helped me, and I've mentioned this in videos before, but I actually learned it from you, I stole it from you, is if you're writing in different point of views and you're like alternating point of views, is to use a different font when you're typing in your Scrivener.
Doesn't that make
or whatever.
a big difference?
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Like, it has helped me so much. Even just a slight change of font gives you like a whole different feeling towards what you're writing.
Right. Yeah, that's what I found too.
It's kind of a cool little writing hack, I think.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know many people who do that.
Yeah,
I kind of like pick a font and then you stick with it.
Right.
But
that was something I started doing for Resurgence because there was 4 point of views.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
that's a lot.
I'll make it interesting for myself and have the font be different every time. And then it's like the font almost takes on a personality of that character. And when you start writing in that font, it's like, oh, this personality on. Activate this personality. and then you're kind of like in the zone of that personality.
Also, I think music can help. That just came to my mind.
That
but
too.
like music, wow, we're like synchronized.
I know, like as you were saying the other one, I'm like, oh, music probably kind of has a similar thing.
Yes,
even though I haven't
for sure.
experimented with that. Like, do you do that?
A little bit. It depends. I haven't done it a lot, but I'm gonna like do it more now that we've talked about it.
Yeah.
Because that I can see how that would really help.
Right. Well, you've done playlists for characters before.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of within the vein
And like
of what
the
we're talking about
style
here.
of music that reminds you of that character might be totally different from another character.
Exactly.
And just it puts you in a different mood. Sort of like if one character's like very thoughtful and literary and the other character's like more gritty,
right,
and more just plain speaking, more honest, more like sees the world in a different way, then like there's going to be like completely different moods you want to be in for writing those two characters, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, music really helps set the mood a lot. So basically what you're doing is creating triggers for yourself. And like you, who Abby's a real geek for psychology and stuff, like this is basically, you know, some pretty deep psychology, because what you're doing is you're triggering your brain like, I associate that font with that personality of that character. I associate that music with that personality of that character. And all you're doing is you're triggering those neurons are firing in your brain. You're like, oh, yep, that makes me think of this. That makes me think of this. And then you're like in that zone of that personality and that character.
Yeah. And you can like literally on a psychological level become that person, which is just so interesting to me. It's always fascinated me about writing is that like you can just slip into another character's skin and feel like you are them.
Right.
And I feel like there's just a turning point. Like, I think a lot of young writers or just beginner writers ask this question and feel kind of lost when it comes to character voice because they haven't written a lot and they feel like they just can't, like, make it happen.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it does come with practice.
Yeah.
And there's, like, a moment where it just clicks and you're like, okay, I know how to do it now. And it's just such a cool moment, but it's like you have to write quite a bit, I think, to get to that moment.
Yeah.
Like, not saying that you can't do it as a beginner, but every bit of practice helps.
Yeah, exactly. And just like play around with it too and be like, oh, okay, I think maybe this character is like kind of like this or kind of like that. And then, you know, whatever, you can always just scrap it and start over.
Yeah.
I've done that too, like where I'll write a whole bunch and then just be like,
I know. I hate it when you do that.
Highlight,
what
delete.
you write is so good. And you're like, oh, I deleted it all. I'm like,
It's just something, you know, let it get the catharsis over with and eventually you're going to hit on it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think practicing and playing around with different things is really great. And that's how I really learned how to write different character voices is by writing fan fiction. Like that's literally, I would attribute all of my skill in that area to writing fan fiction because that's really what taught me how to make two different characters sound different. And, you know, that was just
which
all
is
for
remarkable.
Fun.
Yeah, exactly. Because so many people be like, oh, well, that's a waste of time. It's like, no, not really.
No.
And today's world, you know, you have producers are making films out of what was once a fan fiction. So don't consider that a waste of time. If that's something you're passionate about and you're like, oh, I can write fan fiction really good, then do that.
Yeah. I've always seen it as like the equivalent of like music. In like music, it's like playing somebody else's song. Like I play all kinds of other people's songs.
That's a really cool way to look at it.
And I never think of it as like, oh, this is a waste of time. I'm playing Adele's song on the piano right now. This isn't my song. This is a waste. I never think that it's a waste of time, you know?
Right.
Because it's all practice. It's all of it's making you a better musician.
Right.
You know, and you go to music school, you're going to play other people's music.
Yeah. Right.
And it's
plus,
making you a better musician.
Who's to say it's a waste of time? Like, you know, I'm just really tired of all these constructs we put on ourselves of like, oh, we have to be productive 100% of the time. Like, that was what hit me like super hard in the movie that was, what's it called? Christopher Robin?
Yeah.
That Disney movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, that movie, man, like hit me in the gut. And I
It was a good movie.
I thought it was so like powerful. The part where Pooh was talking about, you know, why can't we just, you know, be happy over the red balloon? Like it doesn't need to be like, oh, we have to be successful in like, let's just be happy over the red balloon. Like, why do we have to always push like success and happiness? Like, oh, once we overcome all these giant hurdles, then maybe we can have like a little bit of happiness. Like, there's so many small, air quote, small, beautiful things to be just like happy about.
Yeah.
It's like, who's to say that we shouldn't just like celebrate, like, oh, red balloon, that makes me happy.
Yeah, and writing should make you happy. It should be,
so it's like, if you enjoy writing fan fiction or short stories or whatever, poetry, it's like, yes, it's all worthy. It's all worthwhile. And the reason you enjoy it is because you're passionate about it, and that's great.
Yeah. It should be an enjoyable experience. I think one of the reasons why it's not an enjoyable experience for a lot of people is because they're like forcing themselves to write something they don't want to write.
Right.
Or they, were forced to write things in school that they're like, I don't want to write. And then you end up like hating writing because you're associating with being forced to do something you don't want to do. So the more you can associate writing with something you enjoy, even if it's just for fun, the better.
Right.
Because then out of that place of happiness, as we know, happiness is the starting point of good performance, not the other way around.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you have to be happy and excited in order to write well. If you're writing something out of like obligation or something, like, that's not going to be fun. Like, it might happen, it might even be good, but it's not going to be something that brings you like lasting joy, I think.
Yeah.
At least it wouldn't for me.
For sure.
The other thing I had jotted down was that things characters do. Which you kind of were saying this when you're talking about like writing down like specifics.
Right.
But like, for example, like a character laughing nervously or running their fingers through their hair. Small things like that, if you can kind of isolate that to one person.
Yeah, like assigning certain body language to one character. Yeah.
Because people don't really all do the same things, like body language wise.
Yeah. Definitely. Everybody has so many different cues that it's crazy. And then you don't even really notice it till you like with somebody new and you're like, wow, they do this a lot. They play with their hair a lot.
Exactly.
They fix their clothing a lot.
Exactly.
You like notice it because you don't do it.
Right. Yeah. And because you're like looking at a new person that other than like maybe you're not like from like I don't notice like anything you do anymore because it's like you're like so close to me that I like
physically right now.
Yeah, physically so close. No, but like like I'm around you so much that like I don't notice like, oh, Abby plays with her hair a lot. Like if someone was like, does Abby play with her hair a lot? I'd be like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, that's funny because like if someone asked me like what's Katie's nervous tick, I wouldn't really know.
Yeah,
I don't really know.
A nervous tick, is that what they call it? A tick?
Like a tick is something that, not the blood-sucking creatures we hate, but like the thing that you do unconsciously.
Right. So like if you, and we've talked about this in books sometimes, like what will come off odd is if an author like assigns a very specific like body language, body movement to a character. Like she strokes her fingers over her eyebrows. Okay, that's like kind of a little bit unusual.
Yeah.
And then multiple people do that.
Yeah.
Then it's like, well, first of all, it's weird. It's kind of different that even one person's doing it. But now like everybody's doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I remember you telling me you read a book one time that was about like, it was often used like they were picking their cuticles.
Yes. Yeah. I can't remember what that was. I think it might have been the Lunar Chronicles, but I can't remember exactly.
Was it Divergent or something?
Oh, it might have been Divergent. I can't remember
I can't remember, but I remember you saying that. A book you read, it was like, oh, she picked her cuticles. He picked his cuticles. It's like, that's a very specific behavior.
Yeah.
And to have, assign that very specific behavior to like a bunch of people makes it feel strange.
It does, for sure.
So it's better to like find if it's like, okay, I want this character, she like picks at her cuticles when she's nervous, then just have that person do that. And then maybe another person like yawns a lot when they're like in a stressful situation, or they run their fingers through the length of their hair, but not everybody's going to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that, again, you can always work it out in the editing process too. If you're like, oh man, this person like, cracks their knuckles and that person cracks their knuckles constantly. It's like, okay, well then you can always, interchange that for something else. But
right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely like write down all those things in your little character style sheet. And another thing I just thought of, as you were starting to say that, is what your characters do for work or for a hobby very much carries over into their voice, I think. And it can be a really fun, unique way to make their character voice more distinct, because as psychology has shown, kind of with a lot of different studies, but I'm thinking of the study that was explained in Sean Akers' book, Happiness Advantage, when he talks about the Tetris Effect and people who played Tetris all day long, how they would like start to see the world in the like from the perspective of that.
Yeah.
And that's just so fascinating. And there's been many studies on the brain showing how what we do all day really carries over way more than we realize into how we see the world, how we see our relationships, our family, our friends, and how we interact with people, and how we speak, and just our voice, our internal voice and our external voice as well. And it's really interesting because you can apply it to characters. And so what they do all day is going to carry over into their voice. They're going to use more metaphors relating to the thing that they do all day.
Right, where that thing might just jump out at them more. Like
yeah, exactly.
If it's a lawyer character, they might be really good at arguing.
Right. Yeah.
Or if they like are bookkeeper, they might like be always like, oh, how much does that cost? You know, oh, well, that's going to add up to be this annually.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas another character might not even think about it.
Right.
But, you know, okay, they're conditioned to looking at numbers, or they're, you know, used to making good arguments.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's going to affect how they are with their family, with their friends, and in social situations.
Yeah, 100%. So that's another thing that I think is really cool to take advantage of. And you do that really well. You're doing that really well in the book that you're currently working on, which only I am privileged to hear.
Top secret book. But yeah, the main character, their hobby/profession carries over hugely into how they talk. And it's actually really interesting too as the author, because it makes it so much more interesting when it's like, you know, okay, you know, maybe they're a poet or something, and so they look at things in a really poetic way.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe if they're, you know, a mathematician, they're going to look at things really like analytically.
Yeah.
And more like in a more like analytical number related way.
Right.
Statistical way.
Yeah. And that's something that like we all do and we don't even realize we do.
Right.
And it makes it just feel so authentic.
Yeah.
Because like we all see the world from our own perspectives, and our perspectives are based on what we do all day and what we spend our time on, because that does change how you see the world. And I know that it changes how I see my world differently, and can relate to things and just use metaphors for things that I think of because only I am around this specific assortment of things I do all day.
Exactly.
So yeah, figuring that out for your characters is going to make the character voice for them really pop and just be super unique.
Yeah.
And stand out amongst other writing and also amongst the other characters in your book. So yeah, did you have any other thoughts on that, or
that's all I had written down? Those are the main things that for me that really helped to enhance.
Good tips. So to recap, starting from a place of figuring out the character's personality types and what their role in the story is, just basically what their personality is, because that's going to carry over hugely into their voice and how much they say out loud or don't say out loud. Figuring out different body language and phrases and analogies, and also formatting styles that you can apply to specific characters, and writing up style sheets for yourself for your own reference. I find that so helpful to reference during the writing process and also during the editing process. Using a different font for different points of view is also super helpful and super fun. And experiment with the music thing. Let us know how that goes for you. And the fonts. And it can be really fun to just play around with different fonts. Even fonts that you wouldn't normally use, like Comic Sans MS.
Literally just about to say that.
You have a funny character, like the Comic Relief.
Yeah.
Try using Comic Sans MS. It totally takes away that like pressure to be literary. and really intellectual.
Can you imagine like a super literary novel, like really dense and literary? It's just like so like
printed in Comic Sans.
Yeah, and it's Comic Sans MS. It'd be hard to take it seriously. It'd be like a really big contradiction.
I've heard that that's like a great font to use. Like there's some post going around the internet that's like use Comic Sans MS to write because it makes you like totally not overthink it and just write, and you write really well. I haven't tried it yet.
That's
but
interesting.
I kind of want to.
We could do like a YouTube video that's like, we wrote in Comic Sans MS for 30 days. Here's what happened.
We should. Let's see. If, like the video right now if you think we should make a video like that, and we'll see if we get enough upvotes. And then what your character does all day. So their habits are their hobbies and their job, or whatever they're studying in school, whatever they do all day is going to affect how they see the world and how they describe things and how they see their family and what they notice about the world. So that all of that carries over into their voice as well. And I think that was the end of my recap. Did I cover everything? I think I did.
Yeah, you got everything. Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. Comment below, and if you're on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, it's youtube.com/KAMNs, right?
Yes.
Yeah, check out the video version of this.
Yeah, there'll be a playlist that'll say the Kate and Abbie Show episodes, and you'll be able to scroll back through all of them. Highly also recommend the story mining episodes because we have tons of great B-roll in them. So those are really fun. We dive into a bunch of stories and kind of like gut them out for all the goodies.
Yeah, those are so much fun.
Yeah.
I love those ones.
Me too. They're great. But thank you guys so much for watching. Let us know what you think of this episode. And if you want to support the show.
Yeah, go to patreon.com/The Kate and Abbie Show. That's where you can show your support for the show and keep it ad and sponsorship free because we want to deliver our best content to you guys without interruptions. So we are so, so grateful for our patrons. Shout out to all of you guys. You're amazing. And yeah, if we don't see you over there, we will see you on YouTube and on any of the other podcast platforms. Share it with a friend because that is one of the best ways to support the show. And we so appreciate you sharing and giving us a good rating on various podcast platforms, wherever you listen the most. But yeah, until next time, just do your best with your character voice. Don't overthink it too much. Have fun. And we will see you in the next episode.
Stay stoked.
And rock on.